My parents skipped my wedding to attend my sister's vow renewal. 5 years later, I skipped something too. 5 years ago, my parents didn't come to my wedding. They didn't come because that same weekend, my sister decided to renew her vows, a vow renewal, for a marriage that wasn't in any danger, that nobody had asked her to save, scheduled with exactly enough notice to make it impossible for my parents to attend both events. My mother called me 2 weeks before my wedding day and said, "Honey, I know this is hard to hear, but your sister needs us more right now. Your wedding will still happen either way. Hers is, it's different. It's about keeping a family together." My wedding was about keeping a family together too. It was about beginning one, but apparently that mattered less than my sister's anniversary party dressed up in white. I got married in front of 200 guests, every single person who mattered to me in this world, except the 2 people who were supposed to matter most. My father's seat in the front row sat empty the entire ceremony. I still have the photo, an empty white chair between my aunt and my mother-in-law, flowers draped over the back like nobody had the heart to move it. 5 years later, almost to the exact weekend, I got an invitation in the mail. Gold lettering, cream cardstock, my parents' 40th wedding anniversary celebration. A big one, the kind with a hired photographer and a string quartet and a guest list that included half the neighborhood. And on that same weekend, completely by coincidence, or maybe not by coincidence at all, my daughter had her very first dance recital. I sent my RSVP back within an hour of opening that invitation. 2 words, nothing else. I want to tell you exactly how we got here, because this isn't really a story about a missed wedding or a missed anniversary. It's a story about what happens when a family spends decades deciding, without ever saying it out loud, that one daughter simply matters less than the other, and what happens when that daughter finally, quietly, decides to stop showing up for people who never quite managed to show up for her. My name is Claire. I'm 34 years old, and for as long as I can remember, my younger sister Amanda has been the sun our entire family orbited around. It wasn't anything dramatic in the early years. No cruel words, no obvious favoritism you could point to and say, "There, that's the moment it started." It was quieter than that, and in some ways more insidious, the kind of imbalance that builds slowly enough that you spend years questioning whether you're imagining it, whether you're simply an oversensitive older sibling reading unfairness into ordinary parenting. Amanda was born 3 years after me, and from the moment she arrived, something in my parents shifted. She was easier, in the way some children simply are, sunnier temperament, fewer tantrums, a natural charm that made strangers coo over her in grocery store lines. I was the quieter one, the one who preferred books to birthday parties, the one who needed more convincing to try new things. My mother used to say, affectionately, that Amanda was her little ray of sunshine, and I was her old soul. At the time, I thought that was sweet. Looking back now, with 34 years of perspective, I understand it was the first small crack in a foundation that would eventually split the family in 2. Every school play, my parents sat in the front row for Amanda's performances, and somewhere in the back, half distracted, for mine. Every report card, Amanda's B- was celebrated as a triumph of effort, while my A- was met with a raised eyebrow and a question about why it wasn't an A. Every milestone in my life felt like it required justification, while every milestone in hers was simply celebrated, no questions asked. I don't say any of this out of bitterness for the sake of bitterness. I say it because it matters for understanding what happened 5 years ago, and what happened again last month. This wasn't a single bad decision my parents made about a wedding date. It was the natural, predictable conclusion of 30 years of quietly deciding which daughter's life mattered more. By the time we were teenagers, the pattern had become so consistent that even my extended family started to notice it, in the careful way families notice things they'd rather not say out loud. My grandmother, my father's mother, pulled me aside once at a Thanksgiving dinner when I was 16. I remember it vividly because it was the first time an adult in my life had ever acknowledged, even obliquely, what I'd been feeling for years. "You know your parents love you," she said, holding both my hands in hers, her voice low enough that no one else at the table could hear. "They just don't always know how to show it the same way they show it to your sister. Don't let that convince you that you matter less. You don't." I cried in the bathroom after that conversation, not because it was sad, but because it was the first time someone had said out loud what I'd spent years wondering if I was imagining. The pattern continued into college. Amanda chose to attend a state school close to home, and my parents threw a going-away party with 50 guests, balloons, a custom banner. I got into a competitive out-of-state university on a partial academic scholarship, something I'd worked toward for years, something that genuinely surprised even my guidance counselor, and my parents drove me there themselves, helped me unpack, took me to one dinner, and drove home the next morning, citing my father's work schedule. I didn't complain. That's important to understand about who I was back then. I had already internalized, deeply, the idea that complaining about unfairness only made you seem ungrateful, dramatic, difficult. The exact opposite of the easy child my sister had always been, so I swallowed it. Every single time, I swallowed it and told myself that adult relationships with parents were complicated, that every family had its quirks, that I was lucky to have parents at all, that other people had it so much worse. I want to pause here and say something directly to anyone watching this who has spent years swallowing the same feeling I did. That instinct, to minimize your own hurt because someone else, somewhere, has it worse, is not humility. It's a habit, and habits like that get built in childhood homes, where one child's needs are treated as reasonable, and another child's identical needs are treated as excessive. When Amanda got engaged at 24, my parents' entire world reorganized itself around the event for the better part of a year. My mother took a leave of absence from work, an actual leave of absence, unpaid, just to help plan every detail. My father, a man who had never once cried at anything in my presence in 30 years, cried during the father-daughter dance at the reception, a moment captured by 3 separate photographers my parents had hired specifically to document that one dance from multiple angles. I was a bridesmaid. I gave a toast. I meant every word of it, because despite everything, I loved my sister. That part was never in question, not once in this entire story. Amanda and I had a complicated dynamic shaped by our parents' favoritism, but she herself had rarely been cruel to me directly. If anything, she seemed almost unaware, in the particular way people raised as the favorite often are, of just how uneven the treatment had been. At that wedding, surrounded by 200 guests celebrating my sister's marriage, I remember thinking, hoping, really, that when my turn eventually came, things would be different. That my parents had simply been more excited for Amanda because she went first, because she was younger, because there was something novel about their first child getting married. I told myself my wedding, whenever it happened, would receive the same enthusiasm, just delayed by a few years. I was wrong. But it would take one more devastating experience before I finally understood exactly how wrong I was. I met my husband, David, 2 years after Amanda's wedding. He was nothing like the men I'd dated before. Steady, unbothered by drama, the kind of person who noticed small things about you and remembered them without being asked to. He was an engineer, quiet in the way that read as calm rather than distant, the kind of quiet that made a room feel safer instead of tenser. David met my parents 4 times over the course of our 2-year relationship before we got engaged. Each time, I watched him try earnestly to connect with them, and each time, I watched my parents offer him the same polite, slightly distracted warmth they'd always offered me. Present, technically, but never quite fully there. He noticed the imbalance long before I was willing to fully admit it to him. About a year into dating, after a family dinner where my mother spent 45 minutes discussing Amanda's home renovation project and roughly 4 minutes asking me about my recent job promotion, David asked me gently, in the car afterward, "Does that happen every time?" Every time, I admitted, and it was the first time I'd said it plainly, out loud, to anyone besides myself. "How do you deal with that?" he asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I think I just stopped expecting anything different a long time ago." David proposed on a hiking trail we'd visited on our second date. No cameras, no crowd, just the 2 of us, and a ring he'd been carrying in his jacket pocket for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment. It was, without question, the happiest day of my life up to that point. I called my parents that same evening, giddy, breathless, expecting, foolishly, again, that this would be the moment things shifted, that an engagement, a genuine, joyful milestone, would finally get the same reaction Amanda's had gotten years earlier. My mother's response was warm enough on the surface. "That's wonderful, honey. We're so happy for you." But there was no crying on the phone, no immediate demand for photos, No mention of clearing calendars to start planning. Just a warm, brief congratulations, followed within the same conversation by an update on Amanda's kitchen remodel. I told myself, again, that I was reading too much into it. I told myself that my parents simply expressed excitement differently for me than they did for Amanda, and that different didn't necessarily mean less. I have spent a great deal of my adult life talking myself out of feelings that, in hindsight, were entirely correct. Wedding planning began in earnest about 8 months before the ceremony. Unlike Amanda's year-long, mother-orchestrated planning process, mine was almost entirely something David and I organized ourselves, researched venues ourselves, interviewed caterers ourselves, made decisions largely without parental input, because parental input was rarely offered unless I specifically requested it. I want to be fair here, because fairness matters in a story like this. My mother did help with some things. She came dress shopping with me once. She helped address invitations one afternoon. It wasn't complete absence. It was something worse, in a way. Partial, distracted presence. Just enough involvement to technically qualify as support. Never enough to feel like genuine enthusiasm. About 6 months before the wedding, Amanda mentioned, almost in passing at a family dinner, that she and her husband were thinking about renewing their vows for their 5th anniversary. Just something small, she said. Maybe next year, though. We haven't really nailed down dates yet. I didn't think much of it at the time. It seemed like exactly what she said it was. A vague, someday idea. Nothing concrete. Nothing that overlapped with anything I had already scheduled and paid deposits toward. 4 months before my wedding, everything changed in a single phone call. My mother called on a Sunday evening. I remember exactly where I was standing. In my kitchen, holding a wooden spoon, halfway through making dinner, David in the other room watching a game. "Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something," she said, her voice carrying a careful tone I'd learned over 34 years to recognize as the precursor to bad news, dressed up as reasonable news. "Amanda's decided to do her vow renewal after all," she said. "And, well, the venue she wants only had 1 weekend available before next spring, and it happens to be the same weekend as your wedding." I stood very still, wooden spoon hovering over a pot of simmering sauce, waiting for the rest of the sentence. The part where she'd say, "Obviously, this was simply information. Obviously, nothing needed to change. Obviously, my wedding date had been set for 8 months, and deposits paid, and 200 invitations already sent." That part never came. "I know this is a lot to process," she continued instead. "But your father and I have talked about it, and we think we need to be at Amanda's renewal. It's really about the health of her marriage, honey. Things have been rocky between her and Tom, and this renewal is meant to be a real turning point for them. I know your wedding is important too, obviously, but yours is. It's a beginning. Amanda's marriage needs saving. I hope you can understand the difference." I want you to sit with that sentence for a moment, the way I had to sit with it in my kitchen that Sunday evening, because I think it captures, more precisely than almost anything else in this entire story, exactly how my parents had been weighing my life against my sister's for over 3 decades. Yours is a beginning, hers needs saving. As if the beginning of my marriage mattered less than the maintenance of hers. As if the day I would stand up in front of everyone I loved and promise myself to another person for the rest of my life was somehow a lesser event than a party thrown to patch over problems in a marriage that, as it turned out later, had far less to do with genuine crisis and far more to do with Amanda simply wanting an elaborate anniversary celebration with a new dress and professional photographs. "So you're not coming," I said quietly, not really a question. "We'll be there in spirit," my mother said, which is, I have since learned, one of the emptiest sentences a parent can offer a child on the most important day of her life. I won't pretend the months leading up to my wedding after that phone call were easy. I cried more times than I want to admit, mostly in the shower, mostly where David couldn't see, because some small, stubborn part of me still felt embarrassed by how much my parents' absence hurt, as though the hurt itself was somehow an overreaction. David, for his part, was furious in the quiet, controlled way he handles most things, not shouting, not dramatic, but unmistakably, protectively angry on my behalf. He offered, more than once, to call my parents himself, to try to reason with them, to explain what this would mean for me. I asked him not to. Some part of me still held on to the hope that if I simply proceeded with grace, without conflict, my parents would eventually see the unfairness themselves, without needing it pointed out to them by an outsider. They didn't. My wedding day arrived on a bright, clear October Saturday. 200 guests filled the venue: friends, David's enormous extended family, colleagues, my grandmother on my father's side who came despite her own health struggles because, as she put it, some things you show up for no matter what. My father's seat in the front row sat empty throughout the entire ceremony. My mother's seat beside it, empty as well. My aunt, my father's sister, sat beside that empty chair, and at some point during the vows, I watched her reach over and simply hold the back of that empty chair, as if steadying it, as if steadying something on my behalf that I couldn't steady myself in that moment while standing at the altar. I got married in front of everyone who mattered most in my life, except the two people who were supposed to matter most of all. And here's the strange thing about grief like that. It doesn't ruin the day entirely, the way you might expect. It simply exists alongside the joy, a quiet ache underneath an otherwise beautiful memory, the kind of ache that never fully disappears even years later. My father sent a card. No call that day, no video message, just a card that arrived 3 days later with a generic, "Congratulations on your special day," printed inside, and beneath it, in his handwriting, "We're sorry we couldn't be there. We hope you understand. We love you." I understood. That was, perhaps, the most painful part of all of it. I understood completely, because I had understood this exact dynamic my entire life. I simply hadn't expected it to cost me this much, on this particular day. For the first year after my wedding, things were tense but not entirely broken. My parents visited occasionally, sent gifts on holidays, called on birthdays. There was an unspoken agreement between all of us not to discuss the wedding directly, a fragile peace built on avoidance rather than resolution. I became pregnant with my daughter Lily about 2 years into my marriage. That pregnancy, I'll admit, briefly rekindled something warmer in my relationship with my parents. Grandchildren, it turns out, have a way of softening even the most entrenched family dynamics, at least temporarily. My mother came to help after Lily was born, stayed for a week, was genuinely present and helpful in a way that reminded me, painfully, of what our relationship could have looked like all along if I hadn't spent 30 years competing for attention I never quite received. But even that softness had its limits. When Amanda had her second child a year later, my parents threw an elaborate gender reveal party, professionally catered, complete with custom cake and a hired photographer. When Lily turned 1, my parents sent a card and a check, unable to attend the birthday party because it conflicted with a golf outing my father had already committed to. I stopped keeping a mental tally of these moments somewhere around Lily's second birthday, not because they stopped happening, but because I finally, fully accepted something I had spent over 3 decades trying to argue myself out of. This was simply who my parents were, and no amount of effort on my part was ever going to change the fundamental imbalance in how they loved their 2 daughters. Acceptance, I've learned, is not the same thing as forgiveness, and it's not the same thing as reconciliation either. Acceptance is simply the moment you stop expecting a different outcome from the same people behaving the same way they always have. It's a strangely peaceful realization, once you finally arrive at it, even though the road to get there is exhausting. Which brings us, finally, back to where this story began. 5 years after my wedding, almost to the exact weekend, a cream-colored envelope arrived in my mailbox. Gold lettering announcing my parents' 40th wedding anniversary celebration. A big one, evidently. The invitation mentioned a hired string quartet, a 5-course dinner, a guest list that included neighbors, extended family, my father's entire golf league. I stood in my driveway holding that envelope for a long moment, feeling something settle in my chest that was neither anger nor sadness, but something colder and clearer than either of those emotions, a kind of quiet, final clarity. Because that same weekend, my daughter Lily, now 4 years old, was scheduled to perform in her very first dance recital. Not an important event in any objective cosmic sense, just a small local dance studio, a handful of 4- and 5-year-olds shuffling through a routine to a song from a children's movie, parents in folding chairs filming shaky videos on their phones. But it was Lily's first recital. She had practiced for weeks. She had asked me, multiple times, if I would be there to watch. I didn't need to think very long about which event mattered more. I called my mother that evening, mostly out of habit, mostly because some deeply ingrained part of me still felt obligated to explain myself to her, even now, even after everything. "Mom, I got the invitation," I said. "I'm not going to be able to make it. Lily has her first dance recital that same weekend, and I already promised her I'd be there." There was a pause on the other end of the line, a pause I recognized instantly, because it was the exact same pause that had preceded the phone call 5 years earlier about Amanda's vow renewal. "Claire, it's our 40th anniversary," my mother said, her voice tightening. "This is a milestone. Surely a dance recital can be rescheduled, or you could send David to record it and watch it later." And there it was again, the same unspoken math I'd been on the losing side of my entire life. My milestone, framed as flexible, reschedulable, secondary. Her milestone, framed as immovable, essential, non-negotiable. "Mom," I said, and I want you to understand that my voice was calm, not shaking, not angry, simply, finally, completely certain. 5 years ago, you told me my wedding was a beginning, and Amanda's renewal needed saving. So you chose her wedding, her 5th anniversary party, over the actual first day of my marriage. I understood that decision, even though it broke my heart. But I need you to understand this decision too. Lily's first recital is happening once, exactly once, and I am not going to miss it for anyone, including you, including a 40th anniversary party that will happen whether I'm in the room or not. My mother's voice shifted from tight to genuinely upset. "So this is punishment," she said. "This is you punishing us for something that happened 5 years ago." "No," I said, and I meant it entirely. "This isn't punishment. This is me finally applying the exact same logic to my own life that you applied to mine 5 years ago. You taught me, very clearly, that when two important events conflict, you choose the one that matters more to you in that moment, and you trust that the person who loses out will understand, because family is supposed to understand these things. I'm simply choosing, this time, the way you taught me to choose." "That's completely different," my mother said. "Lily's recital is a children's dance class. This is our 40th wedding anniversary. And my wedding," I said quietly, "was the single most important day of my adult life up to that point. You missed it for a vow renewal party that, as it turned out, had absolutely nothing to do with saving Amanda's marriage and everything to do with her wanting an elaborate anniversary celebration. I know that now, Mom, because Amanda told me herself, 2 years ago, over wine, that things between her and Tom were never actually in crisis. She just wanted the party." The silence that followed was long enough that I genuinely wondered if the call had dropped. "I didn't know that's how she framed it to you," my mother finally said, quieter now. "You didn't ask," I said. "You just believed whatever version made the decision easier for you, because it always has been easier, hasn't it, Mom? Choosing Amanda has always been easier, because some part of you has always believed her needs were simply bigger than mine, even when they weren't." Word travels fast in families like mine. Within a week, my father called, his tone carefully diplomatic in the way it always was when he was attempting damage control rather than genuine reflection. "Your mother's very hurt," he said. "She feels like you're holding a grudge." "I'm not holding a grudge, Dad," I said. "I'm setting a boundary. There's a difference, even if it doesn't always feel like one, from where you're standing. It's our 40th anniversary, Claire. 40 years. Do you understand how significant that is?" "I understand exactly how significant milestones are supposed to be," I said. "I understood it 5 years ago when I stood at my own wedding with an empty chair where you should have been sitting. I understand it now, watching my daughter practice her recital routine every single night in our living room, so excited for me to be there to see it." Amanda called too, a few days later. Not angry exactly, but clearly uncomfortable, caught in the middle of a family dynamic she had, for the first time in her life, been forced to actually confront directly rather than benefit from passively. "I don't want you to miss Mom and Dad's anniversary because of what happened at my vow renewal," she said. "I never meant for that to hurt you the way it did. I didn't fully understand at the time how big of a deal it was." I appreciated that Amanda said this, genuinely. It was, in some ways, the most honest acknowledgement anyone in my family had offered me in this entire ordeal. "I appreciate you saying that," I told her. "But this isn't really about punishing you, or punishing mom and dad for something in the past. This is about me finally prioritizing my own daughter's milestones the same way our parents always prioritized yours. I'm not doing this out of spite, Amanda. I'm doing it because Lily deserves a mother who shows up for her, every time, without fail, the way I always wished someone had shown up for me. The weekend arrived. While my parents' 40th anniversary celebration unfolded across town, string quartet, 5-course dinner, professional photographer capturing every embrace and toast, I sat in a folding chair in a community center auditorium that smelled faintly of hairspray and floor polish, surrounded by other parents holding shaky phone cameras, waiting for a group of 4- and 5-year-olds to shuffle through a 2-minute routine set to a song from an animated movie. Lily spotted me in the crowd the moment she walked on stage, and her entire face lit up in a way that no 5-course dinner or string quartet could have ever replicated for me. She missed half her steps. She waved at me in the middle of the routine, breaking formation entirely, grinning so widely that several other parents laughed warmly, instead of minding the disruption. Afterward, she ran to me still in her sparkly costume, breathless with excitement. "Did you see me, Mommy? Did you see me wave?" "I saw every single second," I told her, kneeling down to hug her tightly, and I meant it with a completeness I don't think I'd ever felt at any other event in my entire life. David squeezed my shoulder as we walked out to the car together, Lily chattering excitedly the whole way about her friend who forgot the steps entirely, about the teacher who gave everyone stickers, about wanting to do dance forever now. I thought, in that moment, that I had never once regretted a decision as little as I regretted this one. My phone buzzed twice that evening, texts from my mother, presumably sent from the anniversary party, though I didn't check them until later that night after Lily was asleep. The first read, "Everyone's asking where you are. This is embarrassing." The second, sent 2 hours later, read differently. "I watched your father dance with Amanda tonight, the same dance we did at her wedding. I kept looking around the room for you and remembered you weren't coming. I think I finally understand what you were trying to tell me." My mother called 2 days later, her voice different from any conversation we'd had in years. Quieter, less defensive, closer to something honest. "I've been thinking a lot since the party," she said. "About your wedding, about the recital, about Amanda's wedding and her vow renewal, and every birthday and holiday in between. I think, if I'm being completely honest with myself, I've spent 30 years telling myself I loved you both equally, while making decisions that never actually reflected that." I didn't say anything right away, because I wanted to let her finish, wanted to see if this was genuine reflection or another version of damage control dressed up more convincingly. "Your sister has always been easier for me," she continued. "Easier to relate to, easier to celebrate, easier to show up for, because she's always wanted the same things I wanted for her. The big wedding, the big party, the big celebration. You were always quieter about what you wanted, and I think somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that meant you needed less from me. I was wrong, Claire. I'm sorry. I don't know if sorry is enough after 30 years, but I am sorry." "It's not about equal," I said quietly. "I never needed you to love us exactly the same way, Mom. I needed you to show up for the things that mattered to me with the same urgency you always had for the things that mattered to Amanda. That's all I ever wanted. Not more love, just equal effort." "I know," she said. "I understand that now. I don't know if I fully understood it before this weekend. I won't pretend this conversation fixed 30 years of imbalance overnight. Repair like that doesn't happen in a single phone call, no matter how honest it is. But it was, undeniably, a beginning. The kind of beginning my wedding day should have been treated as 5 years earlier. The kind of beginning that finally started to feel possible between my mother and me for the first time in longer than I could remember. In the months since, small things have shifted. My mother has asked more questions about Lily's milestones, unprompted, genuinely curious rather than performatively polite. She came to Lily's next recital, sitting 2 rows behind me, quietly, without making a production of her presence, simply showing up the way I had always wished she would. My father and I have talked less directly about all of this. He's never been a man of many words about emotional matters. But he sent me a card recently, out of nowhere, no occasion attached to it, simply reading. "I should have been there 5 years ago. I'm proud of the mother you've become. I hope it's not too late to show up better from here." I don't know exactly what our relationship will look like 5 years from now. I don't know if my parents will fully unlearn 30 years of favoritism, or if some of it is simply too deeply embedded to ever completely disappear. But I know this. I stopped waiting for them to change before I started protecting my own daughter from inheriting the same quiet ache I carried for over 3 decades. I think about that empty chair at my wedding often. The one my aunt steadied her hand against during my vows. The one that sat there for an entire ceremony as a quiet, visible reminder of exactly where I ranked in my parents' priorities. I think, too, about the folding chair I sat in at Lily's recital, surrounded by tired parents and the smell of hairspray, watching my daughter wave at me mid-routine, with more joy on her face than any string quartet or 5-course dinner could have ever produced. If there's one thing I want anyone watching this to take away from my story, it's this. The people who taught you what you're worth by how consistently they showed up for you are also, whether they intended or not, teaching you exactly how to show up for the people who depend on you now. I spent 30 years learning that my milestones were negotiable, reschedulable, secondary to my sisters. I refused to let my daughter learn that same lesson about herself, even if it meant disappointing the very people who taught it to me. You are allowed to stop attending events for people who have never once rearranged their own priorities for yours. You are allowed to choose the small, unglamorous milestones of the people who depend on you over the big, elaborate celebrations of the people who have spent years choosing someone else over you. That choice isn't punishment. It isn't spite. It's simply, finally, applying the same standard to your own life that was always applied to you. My parents celebrate their 41st anniversary this year. Smaller this time, just a quiet dinner, my mother told me. Nothing elaborate. She asked if David, Lily, and I would join them. I said yes, because forgiveness, when it's genuinely offered and genuinely earned through changed behavior rather than just words, is worth extending. Lily has her second dance recital in 3 weeks. My mother already asked what time it starts. If this story reminded you of your own family, your own empty chairs, your own quiet decisions about who finally gets your full presence and who doesn't, I want you to know something. Choosing yourself and the people who depend on you is never selfish. It's simply overdue. If this meant something to you, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if you'd like to hear more stories like mine, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't to demand an apology from the people who overlooked you for years. Sometimes, it's simply deciding, quietly and firmly, exactly who deserves your presence going forward, and showing up, fully, for them instead.